BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good morning. The Climate Change Committee says substantial action is still needed to meet emissions targets in agriculture.
Generally speaking, there's been no real progress in either direction for agriculture and land use over the last year, which really reflects an overall lack of progress in reducing emissions from agriculture over the last decade and more.
We'll have more on that a little later. First, all week we're hearing from the next generation of young people coming into agriculture-related jobs. Thousands will be graduating from a wide range of courses across the country. Many will be from farming backgrounds, but some are not. Harriet Hodgson has no family in farming, but became inspired to work in the industry after watching farming programmes on the television, including Countryfile, of course. She's just finished her degree at the Royal Agricultural University in Cirencester, where she studied agri-food business management. It included a work placement, and she'll soon be starting a job with Nationwide Produce, which has its own farms in the UK and Spain and sources fruit and veg from the UK and around the world. Harriet told me what fascinated her about farming.
I just grew up watching a lot of the shows on TV, which I found very interesting. And I just developed a passion for the animals and the livestock, because I grew up loving sheep. So I was able to go participate in lambing and other different farming areas. I knew I wasn't going to be fully farming, but I wanted to be within the industry. And that's a key part of the profession I'm going into is the farm visits. I'll still be able to incorporate my daily life with farm-focused role and a farm, like the supply chain and the supplying to farms and buying the produce off the farms.
So I know you have a graduate job lined up, don't you? Just tell us a little bit about that.
So I'm going to be working within procurement. They cover the entire fresh produce supply chain from growing to buying, like exporting to packing and then storing to distributing. It really does offer a large scale, very wide view of the supply chain. It's also got a very diverse customer base, so I'll be able to get involved with retailers, food service and wholesale. Because from the procurement role, you're managing a lot of supplier relationships.
I think a lot of people will be interested, especially younger people, that actually there's so much more to farming and food and the whole food supply chain than just growing potatoes or something, or looking after sheep.
Yeah, it's quite a hidden part of the market, to be honest, because you know about the farmers and you know about the supermarkets. But then this company is a great way of offering they're the middle market, really.
Did you ever think, you've landed a job straight away. That's amazing, isn't it? Did you really think that, you'd be starting off right in the thick of it?
No, I'm very, very grateful. I'm quite excited for it as well, because it was all mostly down to the fact that our Royal Agricultural University offer the internship programme within their degree through a 15-week work placement. I was quite fortunate to really prove myself to the company within that time, to then be offered the job afterwards.
What do you think is going to be your biggest challenge, and what do you think is going to be the most fun?
I think there's a lot to learn about seasonality and also the global trade trends. I think getting to know different suppliers from different cultures and backgrounds can be quite challenging as well, because you've got to understand where they're coming from and also help with sustainability at the same time. The best part, I think, is going to be the farm visits. I personally love seeing firsthand the growing processes and being able to understand more about the farming struggles for specific produce.
New graduate there, Harriet Hodgson. Well, Harriet's new job in food procurement is part of a supply chain which can sometimes be controversial. Many UK supermarkets have made public commitments to sourcing 100% of their beef from the UK, but in recent months some seem to be moving away from these pledges. Last month, Asda was selling Uruguayan beef for a limited period, and 2 weeks ago Morrison's ran a trial selling Australian beef. Sainsbury's has had Wagyu beef from New Zealand on its shelves as well. The National Farmers Union said reneging on sourcing commitments erodes trust and damages farmer confidence. And some other supermarkets have reiterated their commitment to stocking only 100% UK beef. So how much beef is being imported, from where and why? Kevin White from The Grocer has been following the story.
I think we're starting to see evidence of slight tweaks to often long-standing cast iron sourcing commitments when it comes to beef in particular, really. What was once a widespread commitment for British and Irish is now starting to fray, really, and we're starting to see an increase in imports from places such as Australia and New Zealand, and even places like Uruguay as well.
Why is imported beef appearing on our shelves then?
Well, I think it's a combination of issues, really. But first of all, you've got tight supply of the UK herd. AHDB suggests that supply could be down by about 4% this year. You've also got soaring farm gate prices, which makes the product more expensive as well. And in the wake of trade deals with Australia and New Zealand in 2022, we're now starting to see an increase in imports. Initially, they were targeted at the food service sector, but we're now seeing a lot more apparent interest from the retailers in sourcing from these countries as well.
And is it produced at different standards? Does that make it cheaper? That's the fear from UK farmers, isn't it?
It varies, really. It varies. So, for example, Asda started selling Uruguayan beef in May, but that was from a free-range herd, so not your typical South American feedlot system. Sainsbury's is selling New Zealand beef burgers and kebabs as well under their Taste the Difference label, which is obviously a premium label. And Morrison's has recently unveiled a range of Australian beef steaks as well. So it varies in terms of production systems. It varies in perceived quality as well. And this is not just lowest common denominator bargain basement meat. Some of it, is apparently of a high quality.
That's interesting, isn't it? Do you think they're different cuts from the sorts of things we might see here?
No, they're similar cuts. So these are not specific cuts that we wouldn't be able to source from the UK. But what's really interesting is that, when I spoke to Asda about them selling Uruguayan beef, they said it didn't break their 100% British and Irish sourcing commitment, which is just for own label, and this was a brand that they were selling, so they kind of got out of it that way. In terms of New Zealand beef burgers and kebabs in Sainsbury's said that represents just 0.1% of their entire beef offering. And Morrison's, well, they conceded that them launching Australian beef steaks did constitute them breaking their 100% British sourcing commitment, and they stressed that they still sell 100% British on their meat counters, but obviously they're closing a lot of their meat counters as well. So, that's what I mean by the fraying of these once cast iron commitments.
We aren't self-sufficient, though, in beef, are we? So do we need to support some beef from other countries?
100%, and we do, and we obviously... we backfill most of that supply with Irish beef as well. So it's interesting to see what, that they're casting the net wider now, which is totally fine, isn't it? It's the only issue that certainly the farming sector have is the fact that they've made these commitments. They've said we're only going to sell British beef or British and Irish beef, and now they're changing position. And what we're seeing now is a real kind of divergence in the retailers that still do that, and the ones that are now kind of looking elsewhere for their supply. So the likes of Aldi, Lidl, Co-op and Waitrose have all come out to reaffirm their 100% British sourcing commitments in the past few weeks, and taken a little bit of a dig at their rivals for not doing the same, really. What's interesting about beef in particular is that they had a really good year last year. Sales were up almost £200 million year on year as consumers came back into the category, following inflation and COVID and everything. And obviously, as the price continues to rise, that could have challenges on demand. So, are they doing this so that they can keep their prices down and continue, and maintain that demand? But clearly, it's a difficult market for them at the moment. And, they're having to deal with quite a challenged sector at the moment as well.
Kevin White from The Grocer. The latest report by the Climate Change Committee, which advises the government, states that little progress has been made on emissions from the agriculture and land use sectors in recent years, and substantial action is needed. It shows that agriculture produced 46.6 million tonnes of CO2 in 2023-24. That's more than aviation at 38 million tonnes, but about half that of road transport at 100 million tonnes. Tom Lancaster, head of Land, Food and Farming at the Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit, told me that despite showing some gains in certain areas like woodland creation and peatland restoration, overall, the report shows that more progress is needed.
There's been an improvement in rates of peatland restoration, I think particularly in England and Scotland. And similarly, with regard to woodland creation, I think there's been a significant increase in woodland creation, again in Scotland primarily, but also in England. And that's been enough to bring overall woodland creation rates for the UK to, I think, a 20-year high. But it's also not enough in the context of where the Climate Change Committee have said we need to be, not just sort of in a decade's time, but just in 3 or 4 years' time toward the end of this decade and this Parliament, where we need to be more up towards sort of 30,000 hectares or 33,000 hectares of new woodland in the UK by 2030 compared to where we are now, which is around 20,000 hectares.
Now, one other area was cutting meat consumption, which is mentioned in the report as beneficial to cutting carbon emissions. Has that happened?
According to the Climate Change Committee, again, that is on trend, if you like. And I think that reflects the fact that people are just choosing to eat slightly differently now. You know, we eat food from lots of different cultures, many of which have a much bigger focus and culture of eating vegetarian foods.
And also, you know, connected to that is the fall in the number of livestock in the country, sheep as well as cattle, which we have mentioned in previous programmes. Is that making a significant difference?
It will make a difference in terms of emissions over time because cattle and sheep are ruminant livestock, so they emit significant amounts of methane. So agriculture accounts for over half of the UK's methane emissions, which is a really powerful greenhouse gas. But it will also make a difference in terms of the land available for the woodland and other habitats that we need to create in order to get to net zero. And this isn't necessarily a sort of bad news story for farming. I think this can be a really good news story for farming if the sector across the 4 countries of the UK is supported in the right way through new land management schemes, but also through the markets that all farmers have to engage with and the buyers and supermarkets that farmers have to sell their produce to.
Well, in fact, the report does say, nearly in every paragraph, this means the government must take action in one way or another. Will this report make a difference to government policy?
I think it should do. You know, the Climate Change Committee are a really well-respected body, particularly by this government. I think there's a dawning realisation really amongst ministers and officials that climate change itself is a huge threat to food security and to food production in the UK. We've seen that recently with the really extreme drought and heat that we saw in 2022, the extreme wet winter that we saw last year, and then this year's record-breaking warm and dry spring. And, you know, you just have to go out to see the crops in the fields looking very stressed and thin to see what that's likely to mean for harvest this year. And when you put that together with the fact that I think ministers are convinced that investing in the net zero transition, and not just for farming but for other sectors, the sort of opportunities that these new green technologies provide for economic growth, and I think the Climate Change Committee's advice will be listened to in the corridors of power.
Tom Lancaster from the ECIU. That's all from us today. I'm Anna Hill. The producer was Beatrice Fenton. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.